Our speaker for this meeting is Nick Bayard. Nick is the Executive Director of BirdNote, and I first met Nick after first meeting his wife while I was birding at Titlow Park here in Tacoma. She was very pleasant. We chatted, and she mentioned that her husband was the Executive Director of BirdNote. I said, "Oh, I do a podcast. I wonder if he'd be interested in talking to me." So I met Nick that way and enjoyed talking to him on the podcast and at least one or two other times in the field here. And so I am excited to hear from Nick tonight. As I said, Nick is the Executive Director of BirdNote, a public media nonprofit organization with an estimated 7 million radio and podcast listeners that seeks to inspire people to care about and take steps to protect the natural world. Prior to this role, Nick served as Assistant Chief Equity Officer for the City of Tacoma and Director of the Reach Center. He also served in the Peace Corps in Paraguay, where he founded a trilingual radio show. Trilingual, I like that. He holds a master's degree in public administration from Harvard Kennedy School and a bachelor's degree in environmental studies from Brown University. So Nick, welcome, and I'm looking forward to hearing you.
Thanks, Ed. It's great to be here. Appreciate the invitation. I'll
mute myself and you're on here.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. Just give me a second. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. This is actually not BirdNote. This is just a presentation about BirdNote. So I thought it would be fun to hear the theme music. Like Ed said, BirdNote is a public media nonprofit, and most of you are probably familiar with the show. But I wanted to come on tonight and just chat with you about what's been going on behind the scenes, a little bit about the history. And if you don't know about it, want to make sure that you're aware of all the things that we do. So one thing I thought would be fun to kind of liven it up on this dreary Monday night is I've got prizes. So if you're interested in the 2024 BirdNote wall calendar, I've got 3 of these available as prizes, and I'm going to have a couple of trivia questions I'm going to throw at you throughout the night. And I'm going to kick it off with the first question now, actually. And I'm going to put my email in the chat. And the winner can just email me their address and I'll mail it to you. It's a great Christmas gift if you've got that relative who has everything. There are some photos on here that are not available anywhere else. Some of our photo contest winners' photos are in here, so it's a great gift. So trivia question number 1. Does anyone know the name, and I'd put it in the chat, so the first person to put this in the chat wins. The name of the Grammy award-winning musician who co-composed the BirdNote theme song along with senior producer John Kessler? Anyone? Maybe I went a little too obscure there. Anyone know? Oh, there it is. Greg Butler. Congratulations, Greg. All right. So Greg, just email me your address and I'll make sure you get your calendar. Laurel, nice work. But Greg takes it away this time. Okay. So BirdNote. Our mission is that birds connect us with the joy and wonder of nature by telling vivid, sound-rich stories about birds and the challenges they face. BirdNote inspires listeners to care about the natural world and take steps to protect it. So most people know BirdNote as the daily public radio show on NPR and other public radio stations across the country. If you listen to 88.5 KNKX, that's been our flagship station since the start. It was the first station to air BirdNote back when it was KPLU in 2005. And the idea is really, we want to immerse people in the lives of birds, whether they're birders or not. And the hope is that our shows are interesting to all audiences, people who've never birded before, and people like you all here tonight. And the idea is really a powerful one, is that we our goal is really to sort of instill the love of birds in people and get them to kind of sort of, we create the fuel for the fire, what we hope turns into conservation action. And so as BirdNote's grown, we've seen that. we've seen that play out, and people hear BirdNote and they're inspired to get out into the field and also get involved with conservation. So these are the types of things that we talk about when we talk about our mission. You know, why do we care about birds? Why do we care about protecting them? There are a lot of reasons. All of these are probably familiar to the folks in this group. But, you know, the fact that they really do spark the human imagination and are in precipitous decline, it makes what we do very relevant. And then storytelling is important because we also believe that hope, joy, and love are stronger motivators than doom and gloom messaging. And, you know, sometimes the doom and gloom is necessary and important and contains, it's a better way to sort of convey the truth. But in the long run, we think that we engage people more with actual inspiration to action through this sort of positive, fun, engaging type of storytelling. And it allows us to connect with all different types of folks, different communities, different identities, different nationalities. So we were founded back in 2004 by Seattle Audubon staff member Chris Peterson. First radio broadcast was the bald eagle, an American symbol, on what is now KNKX. And we became an independent nonprofit in 2006. And it's a little bit confusing to folks because they hear us on public radio and they think, oh, it's part of NPR or it's part of KNKX or a local station. It's actually independent. And so the world of public media is a really interesting tapestry because you've got NPR, which distributes the big shows, Morning Edition, All Things Considered. And then you've got partner programs like Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, Fresh Air, where organizations partner with radio stations to produce shows. And then you've got shows like BirdNote, which are produced completely independently and then distributed to that network of affiliate stations. So we're pretty unique. There aren't too many independent nonprofits that produce radio programs on the scale that we do, that reach the audience we do. And that's really a testament to the power of the idea that Chris Peterson came up with almost 19 years ago. So, okay, I'm going to pause really fast because I'm seeing that the chat is moving along here. I want to make sure I'm not missing any questions. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing those links, Elaine. Okay, so a little moving on here. BirdNote had grown to about 230,000 daily listeners by 2007, 7 stations. And it really was a labor of love for the founder and people that worked with her to really just get out there and approach stations one by one and try to convince them that this is a good idea. And, you know, people took them up on it and it slowly grew. And then around this time, Michael Stein and Mary McCann, who you saw earlier, were hired as the new narrators. And by 2011, we'd reached 1 million daily listeners on 110 stations. Some of you might have attended this event. This is the BirdNote Live event in Seattle. I don't know if maybe give a hand raise if you attended the event, just so we get a sense of who was there. But around this time, we started doing more things like this, more in-person events, international birding trips, and our book came out. I'm not sure if people are familiar with our book, but the paperback copy is coming out soon. You'll see that on bookshelves pretty soon. And then podcasting started to become popular, and BirdNote got in relatively early on long-form podcasts with podcasts like Grouse and Sound Escapes, and Bring Birds Back and Threatened are 2 of the more recent productions. This allows us to go deeper into conservation storytelling. You know, 2 minutes is not a lot of time. And actually the daily show is now 1 minute and 45 seconds because the NPR clock changed about 10 years ago. So in 1 minute, 45 seconds, there's not too much you can pack in without it feeling cramped. So this is an opportunity for us to go deeper into storytelling. There are a lot of very cool shows. If you go onto our website under the Listen tab, and you can hear interviews with people like Bill McKibben and people like Karina Newsom and people who are, you know, really on the forefront of environmental conservation, climate action, and birding. So I'd encourage you to check those out. Bring Birds Back and Threatened have won a few awards, and we're going to be coming out with a new season of Bring Birds Back in January. And in 2021, BirdNote had a big thing happen. We were inducted into the Library of Congress. So every BirdNote episode that's produced now is sent to the Library of Congress for archiving. Okay, in 2021, we adopt our formal DEI policy, and we started working with the organizers of Black Birders Week to produce special episodes written and narrated by those organizers. And we started an Indigenous Voices series, which you can find on our website, and some really interesting and powerful stories in both of those series. And then our flagship daily program was developed as its own weekly Spanish language show, BirdNote en Español. So for those of you who are Spanish speakers or aspiring Spanish speakers, you can go and quiz yourself. And our hope with this is that we really connect with audiences throughout the Americas. A lot of the birds we see are also seen and share environments with folks in Central America and South America. And it just made a lot of sense for us to venture into Spanish language as our kind of our next frontier. Okay, and this is us this year. We reached 7 million daily listeners on 300 public radio stations and almost 800,000 annual podcast listeners. And we have a really deep focus on expanding the diversity and representation among writers, producers, and narrators. We have a very big platform, and we take that as a big responsibility, that we want our shows to feel like, the voices and stories reflect the audience, the diversity of the audience that we're seeking to reach. So, if you hear a voice that sounds like yours, or talking about a community that's nearby yours, or, reminiscent of your home, you're more likely to pay attention. And so just from that premise, it just makes a lot of sense for us to be working with a lot of different folks. So we had an open pitch process, which was one way we did that. We put out basically a call for pitches, and people from around the world wrote in with great stories. And we actually, we've gotten some of our best episodes that way. One that really stood out to me was last year. It was just after the invasion of Ukraine. We had a pitch from a producer who was in touch with the zookeepers at the Kyiv Zoo, and they were staying down in a bunker at night, coming up quickly during the day to feed the flamingos. And they had audio of this actually happening. And so they worked with the producer and with us to craft basically what we called an audio postcard of that story, which was pretty powerful. So really, really interesting stuff has come out of that process. Okay, so here's the map of where BirdNote daily broadcasts. So we are in Canada. We need to expand eastward, Canada, and we're in most of the 50 states. I'll zoom in here on the continental U.S. You can see that Florida and Maine needs to get its act together and get with the program here. But pretty amazing coverage, and these are a really wide range of stations. So ranging from, Kankax in Seattle is one of our biggest stations. They reach about 325,000 listeners, all the way down to like college stations that might reach 5,000 listeners. So lots of, big range of stations here. And so now it's time for our second trivia question. Get yourself one of these by answering this question. The first person to put it in the chat will win. And let's see, we have a question about open pitch. Oh, quick question about the open pitch process. So that open pitch is not open at the moment, but if you check the BirdNote website, if you scroll down to the bottom, there should be a link that says pitch BirdNote, and you can check in from time to time. And we'll probably send out an email once that opens back up again. But that's kind of dependent on team bandwidth and budget. But thanks for the question. So, all right, are y'all ready for trivia question number 2? Okay. What was the topic of today's episode? April says the history of BirdNote. No, that's not it. Unless I missed something. That's not the one that at least I saw for today. Anybody else? John Williams says fat pigeons in me. And Karen S says drunk pigeons. Elaine says NW Zealand. So there's a little bit of a bit of truth in each one of these. Pigeons and okay, let's see here. NEE, does that stand for New Zealand? Fat pigeons, drunk pigeons, New Zealand, Zeal. Okay, so Pam has the actual bird name. So I'm gonna word this one to Pam, the caribou from New Zealand. And John and Karen, if you also want a calendar and you want to email me your address, I will certainly send you one as well. But I'll give the official, the official points go to Pam here. So again, I'll put my email in here.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Nick B at BirdNote.
Okay, so let's hear that episode.
This is BirdNote. Caribou, green-blue pigeons native to New Zealand, like to sun themselves after a good meal. Caribou have a distinct preference for fruit. In fact, many local trees depend on these pigeons. They're the only birds left that can both ingest and pass the seeds from the fruits of many native trees. But in warm summer months, the bird sunbathing has a surprising side effect. A part of their digestive system, called the crop, stores their latest snack, where it begins to ferment. The birds, in essence, brew their very own batch of boutique throat wine. The rotund creatures often get so tipsy that they fall out of trees, prompting compassionate Kiwis, New Zealanders, not the birds, to deliver them to local bird rescues and let them sober up. One manager said it was ridiculous. People were bringing armfuls of these flaming drunk pigeons. In 2018, the citizens of New Zealand voted the caribou as Bird of the Year. Perhaps conservation organization Forest and Bird described the species best. That absolute unit, the roundest boy, the devourer of fruit, the whooshiest of whooshes. For BirdNote, I'm Michael Stein.
Yeah.
No, the Michael Stein guy.
No.
And
Oh,
John,
there he is, right there.
I'm gonna mute you, John, if I think you might be unmuted by accident here. Well, okay, so that was the today's episode of BirdNote Daily. I just thought it was a great one. Fun, interesting, engaging, something you'd like to share with friends. It really kind of encapsulates a lot of what we try to accomplish at BirdNotes. And this next one I wanted to share 3 episodes tonight. This next one is called The Freedom Song, Harriet Tubman's Barred Owl Call. And this was part of our 2nd annual Blackbirders Week celebration of episodes. And it was written and narrated by Tasha Lawson, who is one of the organizers of Blackbirders Week. And it was something that she submitted that was new information for most people who heard it had never drawn a connection between Harriet Tubman and the barred owl, and just a really powerful way to kind of link the history of the freedom movement and birding. So here we go with the freedom song.
This is BirdNote. She was an incredible astronomer, master of the stars, extremely knowledgeable of landscapes and geography, an expert forager and healer, an amazing naturalist. She was in tune with the birds and their calls. Notably, the hoot of a barred owl. Harriet Tubman was a heroic abolitionist in the cause to end chattel slavery and an expert birder. On the Underground Railroad, Tubman used the song of the barred owl as a signal to let freedom seekers know that she had arrived. Her call let them know when it was safe to come out. She mastered the sound and used it throughout the Underground Railroad. After learning this story, I was inspired to learn this hoot myself in homage to Tubman. It was so smart to use the barred owl song as a signal. It's easily disguised, it's nature. She knew to use it at night when it would blend in with other nighttime sounds. But those in the know knew it was Tubman. And when they heard it, it was an important signal on a journey to freedom. This week is Black Birders Week. To learn how to participate, follow the hashtag Black Birders Week on social media and visit birdnote.org. I'm Tasha Lawson.
So really, really neat episode there. A nice little public service announcement for folks to hear during Black Birders Week. Okay, so you can hear any of these on our website or anywhere you get your podcasts. And Tasha's actually going to be guest hosting an episode of Bring Birds Back in January. So if you follow that podcast, you'll find out about that when it comes out. Okay, and our last one we're going to hear tonight is Trumpeter Swans Rebound in Arkansas. And this one just really does such a nice job of bringing in immersive sound, a conservation success story, that I had to share it. I think it's one of our gems. There are many.
This is BirdNote. With a voice like that, there's no wondering where trumpeter swans get their name. Weighing over 25 pounds and measuring about 5 feet from beak to tail, these swans are the heaviest flying birds in North America. This flock of trumpeter swans is coming in for a splash landing at Magnus Lake, just outside of Heber Springs in Arkansas. Seeing hundreds of them here, it's hard to believe these birds were nearly hunted to extinction by the turn of the 20th century. This region is part of their comeback story. After a small flock of swans began wintering at Magnus Lake in the 1990s, the Arkansas Audubon Society named the site an important bird area. Now, Arkansas hosts one of the biggest populations of wintering trumpeter swans in the southern U.S. They'll spend their winter here and at nearby ponds, foraging in the shallows in search of aquatic plants. As they lift their black beaks to the surface, sparkling rivulets of water roll off their long, graceful necks. After a long day of dabbling, the flock is ready to roost for the night. Because of their immense size, they need at least 100 yards of watery runway to become airborne. And they're off, taking flight into the winter sunset. For BirdNote, I'm Ariana Rimmel.
Okay, and you'll probably recognize Ariana's voice if you're a regular listener. Ariana's been one of our more regular narrators over the last few years. And this episode and others that are kind of a good cross-section of BirdNote daily episodes, you can find on the 2022 staff picks page of our website. I don't know if any Blockbuster or your local VHS video store used to have the staff picks section. I guess they do that in bookstores too. But we did it for our team last year, and we put it on the website. So when you get the slides, you can get the link to this, or maybe Elaine can put that in the chat. And it is time for our final trivia quiz. So to get our beautiful calendar, this quiz question is something I've already talked about. Kind of, if you're paying attention, you might be able to remember it from the slides earlier. The question is, are you ready? What is BirdNote's most recent or newest podcast production? Or I should say, what is our newest series? Bring Birds Back, that's close. That's our second newest. But there's one we put into production right after. Threatened, that's the third newest. There's one more. I'll give you a hint. It's the same length as BirdNote Daily. No, it's not BirdNote en Español. Yes, Ed Pullen takes it away. Congratulations, Ed. You can write me, Ed, to get your calendar, and I'll mail that out to you. Okay. Yep, that's it. Okay, so thanks for participating in the quiz game. And before I wrap up and we go to questions, I just want to share a little bit about what we're planning for the future. So we have a new strategic plan. We are going to be launching basically within the next month or two publicly. And the whole crux of this plan is that we want to lean into the taking action part of our mission a little bit more heavily. So our goal by 2027, we will achieve our goal of inspiring 1 million diverse new conservation champions, at least 50% of whom are Gen Z or younger, to take action to protect the natural world. So we know that we inspire a lot of people. We know that we bring joy to a lot of people. What we don't really know is exactly our full impact on human behavior. So we're going to be working with some external evaluators and really trying to understand what actions people take based on BirdNote episodes. And we're going to be producing a lot of episodes that are focused on what people can do to protect birds and the habitats they depend on. So we're excited about it. If you're listening in January, you're going to hear a whole flurry of episodes from Bring Birds Back to BirdNote Daily about this plan, about what we're hoping people will do. And then there will be a national survey that will go out and we'll encourage people to fill that out. And then we're going to do other sort of surveys of radio markets and things to get estimates of what the real scope of our impact on human behavior is. So we're excited about that. And we'd love to chat with you more about that if you have questions. And this is how you get engaged. You can subscribe to our podcasts, email newsletter, share BirdNote stories with friends. You can donate on our website. We're very dependent on listeners and fans, so we appreciate any support people want to offer. Tax-deductible donations, especially monthly recurring donations, are really meaningful. In the same way that you'd support your local radio station, if you love BirdNote and want to support it and help us thrive and grow, that's a great way to do it. And then we've got our social media handles down there. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and see if there are any questions. And just want to say thanks again so much for allowing me to share a little bit about BirdNote.
Excelente. I'll practice my Español.
Muchas gracias.
Oh, that was fantastic. I mean, I wish there was an easy way for us to have everyone put their hands up who has been a fan of BirdNote for decades. One of our dear friends mentioned early on in the meeting that she got into birding almost 20 years ago, largely kicked off by listening to BirdNote.
Mm.
Right, Laurel?
That would be correct. It was very formative for me getting into birding.
That's
If
really
anyone
great to hear.
has questions, you are very welcome to either type them into the chat or even dare you unmute and speak. While you're thinking about them, in the chat, along with some nice things that you all have contributed, there are a number of links, and most of you probably know if you click on those, they are hyperlinks, and you may open up a web page to look at later if you wish. Oh, one of our denizens, I don't know, that doesn't sound very nice. I think a different word is what I meant. Carlene has written, I was around Seattle Audubon when Chris came up with the BirdNote idea. That's wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. Chris Peterson. And another one of our favorite people, new episodes used to be posted to tweeters. You know, that's interesting. I think it was Ellen Blackstone that was doing that. She would put a weekly, here are the BirdNote episodes that are going to be there. And maybe when Ellen retired, that particular personal thing did go up. I remember now that you mentioned that. Yeah.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Nick, our president of WOS, Dave Kreft, asks, is there a particular BirdNote daily episode that generated an unusually high number of responses from listeners? I mean, actually, first question, do you have a venue for telling how many listeners tune into a program? I would think that isn't really possible with the radio, but
well, we know with podcasts, we know down to the exact number. It's about 780,000 if you add up all the listeners over the last 12 months or so. And on the radio, it's a lot trickier. So different stations have different abilities to estimate their size. We do an annual radio survey of all the stations that broadcast BirdNote, and about 2/3 of stations respond to that survey, and about 2/3 of the ones that respond have good data. And so we use that data to kind of estimate, extrapolate a little bit based on the size and location of the other stations that either don't respond or don't have the data. And that's how we come up with we try to be pretty conservative about it with the radio number. And so, for example, just starting in July, KPSU in Pennsylvania started airing us, became our biggest station ever. And they have an audience of 450,000 people. And they know that because they've done extensive surveys and things. And, that's not to say that 450,000 people are all listening exactly when BirdNote airs, but it means that they're tuning in at some point during the day, during the week, and likely hear it from time to time.
interesting. Big Brother is listening. Jan
Kind
has
of.
asked a few questions. The second one, Jan has asked, what is the main funding source for BirdNote? And I can tell you it's listener contributions.
That's right.
Her first question, how many bird species, *S, songs or notes, calls, I guess, vocalizations have been broadcast on BirdNote?
Oh, you've stumped me.
US and non-US.
All of us. I don't know that we keep track of that. We have an archive of shows that is about 2,500 shows. So about 2 years ago, this is a project that Ellen Blackstone was a big part of. When the Library of Congress reached out and said, we'd like to include BirdNote in Library of Congress, Ellen and a few others sat down and went through every single historic BirdNote episode and basically put aside the ones that were either very sort of specific to Seattle or the BirdNote staff, or maybe had some outdated science, or maybe some terms that aren't used anymore, and either had those reproduced and with new writing, or set them aside for good. And so what's left is about 2,000 episodes, and we keep building on that. Of those episodes, I know that we cover specific species. We've covered specific species in more than in repeat episodes for sure. So if I had to make a venture of what you could find if you listen to the entire BirdNote archive, I would say probably about 1,800 species, and that's an educated guess. If somebody wants to listen through the archive and correct me on that, I would love it. But that's about as good as I can do tonight.
That's quite extraordinary. I'm scratching my head to think back. When was the first time BirdNote's species went international? Do you have that in your? Obviously today.
Yeah, the early days. There's not great because we didn't have the same tools at our disposal. A lot of the early episodes are actually on tape.
Oh yeah.
So when you get back in history, it gets a little foggy. But I imagine it would be pretty early because there are a lot of Arctic. BirdNote has historically done a lot of sort of migratory Arctic birds. And so once you get into that territory, you're everywhere. So I would imagine it'd be, within the first year or two.
And I also thank you very much for allowing me to stick my foot in my mouth because, for example, our Swainson's thrushes right now are down in Costa Rica. I mean, it's not
Right.
exactly correct to say going international by picking another bird. Well, that's
But
great.
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, and we've had a lot more episodes where there's a bird that's just in India, or a bird that spends most of its time maybe in South America but might migrate. So it's gotten a lot more global.
Well, it's a great resource, and it's got so many ways to search for things. You can put topic, a bird, a speaker, a writer, and pull out so many bits. So thank you, all the people behind the scenes, behind you, Nick, and other people who have for one of the most wonderful. What was that city that you had said that had the most listeners? We got to beat them.
Oh, it's a radio station in central Pennsylvania, APSU, and they've got multiple signals. So it's a little bit, it's not cheating exactly, but in the same way KNKX actually has multiple signals. I'm not going to recall exactly the numbers all off the top of my head, but they've got different antenna. Basically, they're sending out radio broadcasts, and it's considered one station, but it's all over the place.
Excellent.
So if anyone knows anyone down at KOPB in Portland, that's one that they're behind the 8 ball. I'm going to go ahead and say it. They should be airing BirdNote, and
Oh my
I'm not afraid to say it. So that's
right.
one that we've had on our list for a long time.
I'm going to write to Nagi. Excellent. Great
Please
chat.
do.
Anyone else have a question for our esteemed speaker here? I don't know, Nick, if that does carry any interest to you, but as Diane had asked, had pointed out, new episodes used to be mentioned on tweeters, which you now know a lot more than you did a month ago. There are a lot of people that look at that, and it's another way of diversifying your name if you get someone to do that once a week.
That's a great idea. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate knowing about that. That's great. So yeah, we'll see what we can do. And let me also share, we had a really special event last week. I'm not sure if anybody was able to attend, but we had David Sibley, the illustrator of Sibley Guides, in a bird drawing throwdown showdown against a comedian and voice actor named H. John Benjamin. It was great fun and really interesting to watch them both draw, under the clock. And then we had a performance by a virtuoso violin player named Andrew Bird at the end. So I put the link to that recording in the chat if anybody wants to check it out. But it was a lot of fun.
Well, reminding everyone that BirdNote exists because of listener support like you. Nick, we want to thank you very much. If there's anything you'd like to add, we welcome that.
Thank you. I guess just stay in touch. It's great to meet this group a little bit more formally. I know some of the folks in this group, but I really appreciate being kind of welcomed in to share some information with you, and hope to connect with you in person out there, over Zoom, wherever. And thanks again for just the chance to come and tell you about what we're up to.